was driving through Montana headed east, and my company had miscalculated my mileage, so I requested an emergency fuel up. I got a response with the nearest gas station that I could get approved at. It wasn't exactly close, so I turned off the main highway and headed toward my stop. It's pitch black. There's no moon, no city light, and I haven't seen any headlights for about an hour. I'm cruising down the highway, and I see something in the middle of the road at the furthest extent of my headlights, so I slow down, naturally, as I approach it. When I come to pass it, I get one good glance at it and slam on my brakes as I pass right in the middle of the highway. All I could think was, what did I just see? So I back up looking in my mirror until I see its red silhouette in my brake lights. I pull my brakes, put on my jacket and grab my flashlight and hop out. I walk to the back of my trailer and put my light on it. And there it was. A headless, skinless, mangled corpse. I froze and my jaw dropped. I didn't know what I was looking at. I just stood there in the middle of the highway, in the cold, stagnant air. The only sound is the hum of my truck 50 feet back, watching the steam rise from this pile of meat. There was no fur, there was no clothing, just a fully intact rib cage with a mess of other miscellaneous bones attached by ligaments. I debated calling the police, as the rib cage looked big enough for someone my size, but I looked at my phone and had 0 cell service. The nearest town was about 50 miles out. When I put my phone away, I flashed my light around, and standing at the end of the road were a handful of coyotes staring at me. Then they started coming through the fence and trotting my direction. I figured this is the part where I get back in the truck before I get into a situation. So I did, and continued on my way. I still, to this day, do not know if it was human or not, whatever it was, and whatever had happened I was almost a witness of. I convinced myself that it was more than likely a deer and was hit by another truck like my own at highway speeds that would definitely do significant damage. But in retrospect, I've never seen roadkill missing its flesh before. I pull into a Purdue plant, drop my empty trailer a go park where they allow bobtails to sit, right next to a nice little pond. My pickup was in 12 hours, so I do my PTI and lay down in the bunk. At about 3 a.m., I hear something tapping on my passenger side door. I get up, look out the window expecting to see someone. Maybe a driver asking for a lumper check, but no one's there. Maybe I'm hearing things. So I go back to lay down. As soon as my head hits the pillow, I hear the tapping again, except this time it's on my driver's side. Same thing as before. I jump up and look out my window, but nothing's there. Double lock my doors just in case and open my side hatches so I can hear what's going on outside. After about 15 minutes, I hear a very light splat, splat, splat going along the driver's side of the truck. I slowly get up, planning to look out my window at the exact moment whoever it is knocks on my door. And then I hear a thud coming from the roof of the cab. I stop, grab my tire thumper off its hook and ready myself for whatever the hell is going on. Then a motherfucking goose falls off the top of the truck and lands on my hood. It stands up, waddles back and forth and looks at me. As we make eye contact, the tapping at my door starts again. I say fuck it and throw open the driver's side door, and there's another damn goose waddling away with all the speed it can manage, honking like a 5-year-old who just found the horn on his new bike. The pond I parked next to had a ton of them just dicking around. Needless to say, it was hard to sleep that night because every couple minutes the damn geese would peck at my door or land on the cab and waddle around. The worst thing I've ever experienced was around 1996. I was team driving with another individual, Dot. We picked up our load and scaled it out. I opted to drive the first shift. I drove in solid rain from Detroit, Michigan to just shy of St. Louis, Mo. We swapped out at a rest area and caught our log books up. I was tired after driving for 10 hours all night in the rain. One thing I'll never forget was before I started driving that night, the other driver, we'll call him John. said to me before
Road
going
trip,
to sleep
eh?
was, "If we get killed, I'll come and haunt you." He said it with a smile
Nice.
and zipped up the curtain to sleep. After swapping seats, I zipped up the curtain and put a movie on to fall asleep to. My cousin Vinny. The thought that crossed my mind often, while in the bunk, was what I would do if we were, say, going over an embankment or a cliff. My best decision was to hit the deck, get as low as possible, and pray. While watching the movie, I started drifting off to sleep. It was maybe 45 minutes later I woke up to John saying, "Shit, hang on." I could tell that we were weaving or whatever. I just knew something wasn't right. He yelled again and I hit the floor praying hard. Were we going over a cliff? I couldn't see up front because the curtain was zipped closed. The next thing I felt was the entire truck vibrating for a split second. I could tell that it was a violent impact. The strange thing is that there was absolutely no loss of forward momentum from the impact. We were near full GVW of 80,000 pounds. I'll never forget that sound and feeling as long as I live. Right after the impact, it happened so fast, I didn't even know what had happened. We had slid on wet pavement, went airborne in the median, and into oncoming traffic west of St. Louis on 5544th, just west of a way station. After hitting a vehicle head-on, our semi had flipped over and was now facing to the east. Suddenly everything was quiet. I was in shock. John asked if I was okay. I said, "Yeah, let's just get out of here. I smell smoke." I had sat on the passenger side of the floor during the wreck. Now the roof was a door for me to crawl through on my right. John soon followed behind me. There I was, standing in my socks on a wet highway mixed with diesel fuel. Smoke was coming from the hood. That was barely recognizable. I wasn't even awake enough to comprehend what had just happened, and was in shock as well. I remember people running to the white pickup truck that we had hit, head on, with fire extinguishers. It was like I was in a dream. I couldn't comprehend what was going on. I remember shivering and blood coming from my hand and mouth. When I got myself together, the fire was out. The next thing I remember was an ambulance attendant talking to someone on the passenger side of the white truck. I could tell that she was consoling the person. I saw her mouth the words, "I know," with a compassionate face. The next thing I know, John and I were in an ambulance headed for the hospital. I was looking out of the back doors through the windows as we were pulling away. I started crying uncontrollably, trying to imagine the fear that the people in the white pickup must have felt, seeing this semi coming right at them. I purposely left out a few gory details that nobody should ever have to see or even hear about. When we got to the hospital, I learned that all three in the truck hadn't made it: a man, his wife, and their 4-year-old daughter. I felt the same kind of guilt as the gentleman who mentioned giving CPR to the driver on the ground. Why did I survive a horrific accident that killed 3 people? I'll never forget the smell that morning, standing in diesel fuel mixed with rain and the smoke. As it turned out, that stretch of highway was nicknamed Blood Alley because of the deep grooves in the road. It was the site of many accidents. Many months later, I drove through that spot and saw that they had patched that stretch of highway. Wish it could have been done sooner. It was very painful to bring this up after all these years. But it serves as a reminder to give driving 100% of your focus, especially now with people texting, eating, reading while driving. For God's sake, don't ever take even a small trip for granted. After a long haul through the beautiful city of Melbourne, Ben pulled off for the night in a quiet stretch of the town. Being outside the city limits, he was surprised at the thick darkness that followed after flipping off his rig's lights for the evening. With no streetlights, cars, or trucks nearby, it seemed like the pitch black bled into the night sky. He felt lonely, but was accustomed to the solitude of his profession. After his evening ritual of locking the doors, closing the curtains, and checking his surroundings for any potential concerns, he made his way to bed. He rolled from side to side for several minutes, perplexed by the cold he felt despite the summer season. The chill made it difficult to sleep. and he became lost in thought concerning the events of the next day. Suddenly, the cabin light flooded the space in a pale yellow. Startled, Ben sat upright to discover that the passenger side door of his rig was open ever so slightly. Fear shot through him as his mind raced. There was no way the door was faulty. The truck was new and in pristine condition. Was this an intruder? Grabbing a pole used for tightening belts, Ben prepared to meet the invader but didn't move. Seconds seemed like hours as a delicate silence settled over the truck. Nothing. Mustering his courage, he arose from his bed, walked around the perimeter of the truck, and discovered no sign of anything. No footprints, no nearby homes, no vehicles, just Ben and his truck. After uneasily returning to his bed, he fell into an undisturbed sleep. The next day, Ben woke, stretched, and parted the curtains. Gazing out of his window into the daylight, he froze. The hairs on his neck stood up. Immediately adjacent to his truck was an isolated cemetery. Without bothering to put on shoes or pants, Ben started his truck, stepped on the gas, and sped away from that lonely spot. As a carrier for the oil industry, Grace was accustomed to working obscure hours of the night. On one especially late shift, she fell into a trance while making her way along a long stretch of back road. After driving through the night hours for some time, Grace noticed a strange object on the road ahead. From a distance, the object looked large and lumbering. She speculated that a moose was likely incoming, and slowed down accordingly. As the shape drew closer, an uneasy feeling came over Grace as the form remained formless. Her headlights shone directly on the object, but the light seemed to be totally swallowed up into the void of the shape. The entity looked vaguely quadrupedal, but towered 6 feet in the air. No eyes cast a reflection by her headlights. Only a motionless shadow stood before her. Grace was trying to make sense of the situation when an awful epiphany came over her. Detecting slight motion in her peripherals, she looked side to side to discover 6 other forms, similar in shape and magnitude, surrounding her vehicle. With adrenaline coursing through her body, she punched the gas and drove around the objects. As close as can be while passing, Grace could still not identify a single feature of the shadows, just darkness. She never could identify what she saw that night. Having garnered a reputation for being prompt and reliable, Todd accepted a route for an urgent toy shipment to be completed overnight. As he rolled through a quiet country road, he noticed an uneasy feeling in his chest begin to arise around 3 a.m. Disregarding the sensation as silly, he tried his best to ignore his feelings of dread. Todd's feelings of uneasiness increased as a thin fog became a thick fog, and a thick fog became a wall of smoke. Unable to see much of anything, he pulled his rig to the side of the road and decided to wait out the cloud. No other vehicles passed as he sat in strained silence for several minutes. Just as Todd considered calling someone for help, his truck began to quiver and sputter until it turned off entirely. Dread turned to panic as his CB radio failed, his cell reception depleted, and his heart drummed quickly until it stopped. He heard shrill laughter from all sides of the fog. Garnering some composure, he rolled down his window and asked, "Does someone need help?" The laughter intensified, growing louder and louder. It felt like each rise and fall of the cackle was pointed at him, growing with the terror in his chest. And then it was gone. Todd sped away, holding firm to what he felt, and witnessed that odd night in Kentucky. Was driving north through the mountains of Colorado towards Pueblo, and it was my first time dealing with anything like the Rocky Mountains, so I was taking it nice and slow with my hazards on and in the right lane. This was in the spring, and there wasn't much snow on the ground aside from a light dust. I remember passing another truck pulled to the shoulder on my way up, nothing out of the ordinary. However, as I was heading down the mountain, which can be scary as shit in an 18-wheeler, trust me, I saw the same truck I passed earlier fly by me in the left-hand lane. Now being passed on the left going downhill in the Rocky Mountains by another tractor trailer is wild enough. But what really makes this story is this guy's trailer brakes were on fire. He was pulling a load, could tell, because the trailer was sealed. And if you know anything about trucks, you know there's only so much braking you're supposed to do before they overheat and, worst case, catch fire. This guy's truck looked like a fucking comet as he sped down the mountain at what I thought was a surely to be deadly pace. I grabbed the mic to the radio and called out to him, "Hey driver, your brakes are on fire. I mean literally on fire." After a few seconds of static, a rough and weathered sounding voice comes back over the speaker of my radio and says, "Cool as a cucumber." I know. And he disappeared around a curve. I never saw any wrecked truck, emergency crews. I did see a discarded fire extinguisher on the ground at the base of the mountain, though.